I'm so excited to talk to you. I absolutely love Anne Lee.
Oh,
Prob-
thank you.
it's probably my favorite film of the year, which I
Oh,
just realized that. Like I was like, okay, what am I putting as my number one? And I think it's Anne Lee. So
thank
yeah,
you. That's so nice. We got our grassroots group of supporters of this wild radical feminist musical.
yes. I didn't know if you saw it's getting a lot of love on social media right now, mostly because they're saying Anne Lee was misunderstood, hundreds of years ago and is misunderstood now. Have you been paying attention to this swell of support?
It's been so nice. It's really lovely. I do feel like yes, she was misunderstood then and she's misunderstood now. And I experienced that early on showing the film that there was you know, a group of people who didn't connect with this story. After our first press screening in Venice, supposedly 15 male critics stormed out during the birthing sequence. So I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I heard, and it's made me both excited and terrified because such a big part of our business is run by by white middle-aged male. It is scary when you get an immediate negative response from that group because they're so powerful. But there are a lot of champions as well, men and women, I'm happy that people are gathering around the films and that it's finding sort of its supporter as well. She's defiant and complicated and it's really exciting to bring those complicated characters to life. Someone sent me like a screenshot of an article that said like, oh, is there room in Hollywood or something for Oscars or whatever for these really complicated women? And I was like, I don't know if there is, but it sure would be exciting if there were.
There is room. There's totally room.
Yeah.
I love, first of all, I think having a group of white men walk out on your film is probably such a flattering thing because that means that you're doing something right.
I like if they're angry. If you don't care, it's sad. That's upsetting. But if
Yeah,
students get really pissed off, then great. Let's
yeah,
start a conversation.
yeah.
I don't you don't have to be adored, but you want to be in dialogue. I wish they would have watched it through though.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand is when people do that. But
Yeah.
anyway, so early on in the film, one of my questions that I had, even just like before I knew I was going to talk to you, is Anne sees her mother and father having sex early on in the film, and it's not explicit, but I can't tell whether she's repulsed from the act itself or whether it wasn't consensual between her mother and father. But that seems to be like a core memory for her. And I was wondering what kind of what your interpretation was there.
Well, so according to their testament, they said that she would get in violent arguments about her parents, about them having sex and having more children. My take on that is probably because Anne was probably part of delivering most of those babies as well. And they lived in small, tight quarters, so there's probably hardly any privacy. So I do think that her exposure to their sexuality and all of these births, and then her mother eventually most likely dying in childbirth, it's so consensual, like what, I don't know, it's hard to say, right? I'm
Right.
sure she felt at that time it was your duty and obligation to sleep with your husband. So what is that? I don't know how, I think for me I wanted to keep it ambiguous, that sex scene. I think in terms of what the mother, what her feelings around it, is it just a obligation, like is it just an obligation for her? It's definitely, or what is that? It wanted it to be complicated, which is what I like about being able to really show sexuality on in films. It's how incredibly complicated and all of the dualities and all of the nuances of a sexual interaction, how you can show that with images without explaining it or really talking about it. Because I think with gestures and movement and these subtle things, you can truly say so much. And you can say, I don't know how I feel about this. I feel really complicated about this, versus saying, this is, this is someone, abusing their power. This is someone, it can be many things. And that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting scene too.
Yeah.
What was your research like, especially on a story that's, I'm not sure how much research there is. But like, was Anne's brother really gay? I know, and I know there are only like a few members in existence still. Did you speak with any of them? I guess I have so many questions, obviously.
No, so I did a ton of research. There is the testament that is all of the witnesses' statements. That is a collection of stories about her life and their early days of Shakerism. There are public records, marriage, death, births, all of these things. Obviously, there are court transcripts from some of the trials held against her.
Wow.
There are all of these things. There's a lot of that you could build, that we built it on, that I did. There's definitely liberties that I've taken with the surrounding characters. William was, I don't know why he rejected, why he became celibate and followed his sister wherever she went. There's not a lot of information about William. He was supposedly married at some point and had children that he left behind. He also apparently had very long hair down to his waist, and loved beautiful clothing and things, and had to give up that sort of vanity. There was a journey in there. That those are like the few things we know about William. The other things we know about him is just the closeness with his sister. But I did feel, just like reading Foucault and like thinking about sexuality and pre-Victorian sexuality, I felt that my understanding was that there were less labels at this time, because this is before they started saying, oh, this is masturbation or queerness or anything. Or it was less of a label and a shameful sort of journey with that. So I wanted to, but I do think that because the Shakers offered an alternative way of living together, aside from traditional gender norms and relationships, I thought that bringing in a queer character to that narrative, because I'm sure they were really heavily represented within that community, because of what was offered, I thought that William could represent that, but without bringing in any of our modern ideas of like, oh, I feel shame because I'm queer. Like none of that, because that didn't exist at the time. Yeah. It wasn't really that shame narrative was more modern. That was tied to Victorian times. So I thought that, okay, I want him to have a sacrifice, that is a sacrifice that's joyful. In a way, like I want him to have a positive love story that he has to let go of in order to follow his sister, and I want there to be a great sacrifice for him, but of something joyful and positive, and not this sort of other more modern idea of that we are sort of associating with queerness. Long answer.
That's really fascinating. Sex is obviously a huge thing for Anne. And probably because of the series of miscarriages, also because of now thinking about the way she was brought up with her parents. But in the moment where she kicks the couple out of the Shakers, do you think there's any sense of like jealousy or resentment that she doesn't have the same relationship with sex the way the other people do?
I mean, that's an interpretation. It could be there. But to me, sort of my direction for the scene and my thoughts around writing it was more about that she thinks that Nancy is doing something that's quite harmful to herself. So it's very painful for her. Because I think, to me, the where she is at that state is like of this place of true transcendence, where she really thinks that she's found the key for happiness and to be safe as a woman, and that is really what's driving her. It's never about like her ego or like wanting that. I think that she I didn't want to show her as asexual. I wanted there to be a curiosity and a complexity of her sexual relationship earlier in the film, so that you could see her joy and love, and also the things that are not right and wrong and feels incorrect to her. Like, I wanted all of that sort of complexity to be baked into that earlier story, so that you could perhaps end on this place with her where you understand her turning to celibacy as not just right for her, but right for most women. To say that this childbirth and pregnancy will kill you, you know, and you are considered your husband's property, and the only route to equality is by saying there are no marriages, there are no husbands and wives, we're only brothers and sisters, and we have to sacrifice lust, because lust is really what drives. It will just, really for her, she sees all of this as just like the most, imagine you lose 4 children. It's just, I mean, and the pain and the suffering of like giving
Yeah.
birth in a small bedroom with most likely just like with a 14-year-old helping you. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I understand that journey to thinking like, no, this is probably just bad. Like, please. And then thinking that, oh no, my little niece who I've raised is now going to choose all of that pain,
Yeah.
and what that's going to do to her body as well, how that's going to ruin, like in her mind, ruin her body, and all these like just maybe kill her, because she'll give birth to between, my great grandmother had 14 children, 14 pregnancies and births. It's wild, you know? Can you
Yeah.
imagine going through that? So I think that's my interpretation of where she's coming from. So less one of like, oh, I wish I had this, and more of just like, this is bad for you. But of course, I think, but because she's not, they weren't enforced. Like, you could come and you could go as a shaker. They were not. They had what they called later on winter shakers, people who stayed for a while when it was cold and got food, and then they shelter, and then they left. And they were not trying to just keep them there in this like really aggressive way that some sects would do. So again, as she's saying, like, Nancy has to choose this. And she has experienced the joy of motherhood and the love for her children. And that's really an intense and deep connection for her. So I think a part of her probably also understands the want, the need for that.
Yeah. I have a question about the music because first of all, it's incredible. But it also sounds like sexual and orgasmic at times. And I was wondering, was that deliberate? I found it to be ironic that all her proclamations against sex sound like sex. And I was wanting to know kind of what direction did you give Daniel Bloomberg to, if anything?
Yeah, so for me, it was really thinking about how can we have, because I wanted those moments to feel more like like a massive, just like ecstatic, intoxicating. Like, it had to come out somewhere, right? Most human beings are sexual, and we they needed to be some sort of outlet, some place for it all. And because they were described as having danced and for days, and singing and dancing for days, and just moving, and how joyful those sort of dance moments were for them, and I thought that it should feel almost erotic, those moments, because that erotic energy needs to come out somewhere. So I intentionally wanted it to be like really sensual.
It totally comes off that way too. I love I said I'm waiting for everybody to start doing the dance. The dance.
Yes.
The Ann Lee dance. I just have like one more question. This has been a great conversation. Since the Shakers, clearly were not into procreation, do you think this was like the first like doomsday cult in some way? Like, what was
Well,
their end game, I guess?
Well, so I mean, they didn't, for them, there were a lot of other doomsday cults that believed that the world were ending, and that, everyone's, that sort of narrative was being peddled all around Mother Anley, and when they didn't fulfill that prophecy that they had predicted, happened a lot. A lot of them would turn to the Shakers, and they actually folded into the Shaker community, where what Anne was preaching was truly like paradise on earth, through toil, through labor, through dedicating yourself to a craft, to just completely giving yourself to the to making something that was sustainable and beautiful and would last forever. They would, put your hands to work and heart to God, work every day as were your last day on earth, or as if you had 1,000 years to live. Like all these ideas around just that perfectionism in your work and dedication to that. So I think that that was the pull really for them, was truly that. And then in the beginning, they did a lot of missionary work and adult conversion. They adopted a lot of children and cared for them. Then they stopped going on missionary journeys in the late 1800s, stopped seeking out adult conversion. If people sought them out, they could join, but they weren't actively trying to, have more people join. And then but they were still adopting children, but they were always offered the option to leave when they turned 18 or of age. So it was never this idea of trying to keep everyone in. And it's because to me, it was a faith that was not driven by ego. There's so much thought around just community and acceptance and understanding and empathy. So imposing the religion on people where it was unwanted seemed completely contradictory to their value systems. So therefore, in the end, and in the 70s, they sort of stopped almost accepting a lot of new members. So now there was a third Shaker that just joined. There's 2 left. A third joined, completely unrelated to this, obviously, just after, when I was in the very end of post-production. I just finished the movie, actually, and we were making the 70 print. And then I heard that a third had joined. But I didn't speak to them during the process of making the film or telling the story, because we were going to have a different perspective. I was very curious. I wanted to speak to them, but I resisted the urge, because to them, it's a living religion. To me, it's an interpretation of a historical figure. It's a different conversation. And I was worried to feel bound by their ideas and thoughts around her story, and feel scared of doing anything that would contradict their vision of her. So I was more excited to have that conversation on the other end of the film. And I have a million questions for them. And if they wanted to speak to me, I would love that. And I tried to treat her story with the utmost respect and kindness. But again, we just come at it from different places. So.
Well, I absolutely love your film, and it's one that has grown with me too, that I have not been able to stop thinking about. So thank you so much for it. Thank you for this conversation. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Oh, it's really nice to meet you.
Thank you.